Hello and welcome to the first real lecture about Quarkus. We're going to see how to configure your application. Imagine a situation where you want to distribute your app to other companies. So our greeting service, greeting microservice or whatever it is. And you are absolutely sure that the other companies will want to modify some settings of your app. For example, if you share your app with Germany, they want to see the hello, right? They want to see Guten Tag or something like this. So this can be accomplished via the configuration or properties or whatever it is. So in Quarkus, we use a micro profile from Eclipse, and it makes everything really easy to configure. So you already know that we have application properties, right? That's for now empty. And we also have in greeting resource, we call a greeting service say hello, right? So here, we won't look at our dynamic version of say hello this time. We're going to see what we can do with this. So currently hello is a static text, right? You can't change it in any way from outside of your app, right? So you need to build it and rebuild if it's dev in order to see changes. So what we can do, of course, is to extract this hello somewhere. And the best first place where you can go is application properties. So what we can name it, let's go with the greeting dot I don't know, prefix or name. Yeah, greeting name equals hello, like this, right? Let's go with this one. And so here, in order to use this value, you need to create a new annotation called config property. And in config, in attributes and parameters, you can put a name equals this first value greeting.name. Greeting.name. Oops, yeah. And here you can specify type of your property. The best thing is you can put here an integer if you expect it to be integer. So if it was like, for example, greeting number, right, equals 1, 2, 3, you could you could put the integer, right, a greeting number, and here it will be integer, like a greeting, whatever you want to name it, greeting number, like this, for example. But we're going to concentrate our mind on the name. So we're going to name a string name. Let's say it's just a name, right? So, and so now we can put the name. That's it. So we can start our app and in the Quarkus dev. And let's actually remove our value from application properties for a while, right? Let's say we haven't modified it. So when we run our app, you'll see an error which says no config value of type Java long stream exists for greeting name. This means that there is no such property defined anywhere, so it's null. And the default action of microprofile is that if it can't find anything for the greeting name, and there is no default value, and there is no like optional parameter. So the default, if it's not like optional, right? If there is not optional like this, actually let's show then it will throw an exception. That's the correct way, because maybe that's something really important for you. The name, for example, maybe it's a Java GDBC connection, and without it the app won't run. So that's the correct way to work with it. So let's roll back our green name. And so now if we'll actually, I think if we'll go to hello, it actually should work right now. Yeah. So Yeah, it's called replaced, and now it's working correctly. So now we can just change it to something else, Guten Tag, for example. You can put freely spaces here, and you can see if we rerun, you can see the Guten Tag. And you can also put it like this. This will work as well. Depending on your style, it will work as well. So there is no space before. So if it has a space before the equal sign, it also should have a space here. Otherwise, I think it will work as well. But yeah, so just follow the style and everything will look correct. I just put it always without the spaces because it's like this will work for sure. Like, you know, that there is no ambiguity in the spaces here. So yeah, that's there, right? We have an application properties define this value. And what is the other way to define it? So let's create a suffix. Name equals greeting suffix, right? And so string suffix. But let's imagine that name is really required value, and without it our app shouldn't run at all, right? For suffix, for example, you know, we want to have a default value. If we don't have any property anywhere in our app, we just want to expect it to have like default value, and that's exactly what default value parameter is here. So we just put like this, right? And we can put it like name plus suffix, for example, like this. All right, let's see what's going on. And you can see that we have Guten Tag and then exclamation mark. So let's put it back to hello. Let's ensure that it's working correctly. Yeah, so we have a hello, we have a name and suffix, and there is a last thing that you can have, and it's an optional value. So we can create a config property called, for example, name will be greeting, I don't know, let's name it prefix, right? We haven't had a prefix, and we won't put a default value. But on the other hand, what we will do is actually we'll create an optional value. It's a Java util type, and put here, for example, string as well, right? And so it will be prefix. Okay, it will show you a warning in IntelliJ IDEA because in IntelliJ IDEA the styling is automatically that optional should be only return value, but that's totally okay to use it. So what we can do actually is, in this case, of course, if it's null, it will be an optional value, and the optional values show you that it's null, right? So what we can do is we can put it like or else prefix or else like this, right? So we want to have the underscore if the prefix value is 0. So now if we run, you can see that we have the underscore before, and if I put something here, greeting prefix, for example, equals I don't know, plus, right? So now you can see that it's a plus. That's nice. Okay, let's remove it with no name at all. So okay, that's like the most I don't know, the mostly used options here. So you can also access them another way via the config provider. Get config and then get value, for example, greeting name, and then we need to specify what type it should be. So in our case it's string class, right? And so at the return we'll have a value. So it was a name, I think. Yeah, it's greeting. Sorry, my keyboard is like, it's MacBook's keyboard, it's like worst thing. So now we can, let's comment it for now. So this is the way you can programmatically access your config, and you can see that if we rerun, you will see that we have a hello here, which is like greeting name. Okay, that's perfect. So how you can define your properties, and that's like the most crucial question for any developer, because afterwards it's like you can put everything in application properties for a start, but then when you're close to release, right, you'll need to do some more work on the properties, and sometimes you'll need to specify different properties depending on production environment or something like this. And imagine situation that you provided a jar, right, to some DevOps, for example, and the DevOps says that oh, I need I don't know, I need what we have. I need the name to be different, right? And you already compiled your app, and the application properties is not in so let's imagine, imagine this situation, right? MVNV Quarkus actually package, right? So we'll package our app, we'll get a jar, and we send it to DevOps. Perfect. So in this case, the application property, what's this? Tests are failing because surefire reports. Yeah, we forgot to fix our test data, right? So in this case, we're expecting to have it like this. Let's see. It's always a good idea to check your tests, and you see that when something is wrong, test will show you. And yep, it's working correctly. Let's run our MVNV package one more time. So by default, it will take your application properties inside your jar, and you won't be able to modify it, right? So we go to target, we go MVNV, Java minus jar, and then we'll put our runner here. So now when we run our app, you see that it's hello, but if you modify our application properties, hello, for example, like hello2, right, hello2, you see that it's not doing anything. And it's correct, because the jar is no more binded to our resources folder. It actually is. I'll tell you for sure that you can. So you can technically bypass it by passing the application resource as so we have it hello2, right? For example, we can bypass it if we put a target and we create a config called folder called config, and you copy it over to application properties. So right now, if we'll run our Java minus jar, it should theoretically show you a hello2. Oops. Yeah, you can see that it's hello2 in our case right now. And so that's one way to do it. So you can just put a config and then application properties, but it's not always feasible, right? It's not always as comfortable as passing just one value. So what if instead you compiled it as is, right? So if you run our runner right now, you can see it's hello. And so one way you can specify your parameters is when you run our Java minus jar, you can say to DevOps, oh, okay, so one thing that you only need to do is to define. So minus D, you can think of it as define something. And so let's define our greeting name will be equal to hello, right? Hello, hold on, or like Terry, okay, like this. And when we run our app, you can see that we see a Terry here, and you can define as well anything like this with a minus D, it will work perfectly. So that's one way. If you're running the development service and you just want to test one change and you don't want to change the application properties file, so what you can do actually is also go with Maven V, and you can specify, actually I think you can go do it like this, Quarkus def and then minus d define greeting name equals to boolean tag, right? Like this. I think it won't work because, yeah, we need to put it into the squares like this. So now, if we're going to run our test environment, you can see that it's good and dug. So it's working perfectly. So that's one of the ways to define your properties at the runtime. So you can specify it or via define or via application properties or via also the environment. Okay, so now there is we actually have a really nice example of scoping. So you can see that we have a greeting name. Let's go with I'll do it like this. We have a greeting name, right? We have a greeting suffix and prefix. And you see that we basically each time we put a greeting at the start, right? So it's like all the time we have to put greeting. Of course, you can put like just the name, suffix, and prefix, but in this case, you can have a coercion with the other parameters. So it's always a good idea to specify some identifier before. Even you can even put like now tech, for example, right? Actually, in this case, it will be tech now. But in our case, because there is not so much to do, I don't know to put too much text there. So, but in our case, right, with this configs, it's a good idea to group them into something one. And it's also, Quarkus also prepared everything for us. The combining of them is basically it will be just a bin. So we can create let's name it config. Let's create a package config and then greeting config. Let's create it like this. And so what you only need to do is to put config properties, not a config property. So config property can be used for single attribute, for single property. Config properties is an annotation for a class where you can just put a prefix here called greeting. And now, every field that you define in a greeting config will be mapped to something in a greeting namespace, basically. So basically what it means is that I can create a string name and it will be automatically mapped to greeting name attribute. We can check it. You need also, in the case of the bin, you need to specify getter and setter for a field. So let's see. And the dependency injection, you can inject this class the same way you can inject a service. So let's do, okay, let me do it like this. So you can put the inject here and put a greeting config. Let's name it greeting config, right? So it's basically the same way you injected the greeting service in our greeting resource, the same way you inject a greeting config into the greeting service. So now we can replace our name, we can actually remove it, right? And put like a greeting config get name. So now when we go to our example, right, we can reload the page and you can see that hello, and it's working perfectly as it was working before. So that means that the value that's specified in greeting config, this one automatically mapped to a name attribute, and the name in our case it's hello, right? So we can put it like hola, for example, and you can see that it's working perfectly. So let's with this in mind, let's bring everything that we have already there into our config. So we just need to put, actually, we just need to copy this thing here, and yeah, the same way optional values works the same way. So if there is no prefix attribute anywhere in our code, you can just put the optional and we're fine. So what is the behavior for a default value? we don't have a way to put it like default value, right? But with the bin, it's really super simple. You just put it like this, right? So you just need to put a default value in for a field, and this way it will work correctly. So we can actually put a private for them as well, and we need to create a getters and setters as well for these new two values. So now let's remove them from here. So we had a default value there, right? Let's remove all of them and replace it with a greeting config. Greeting config get prefix, greeting config get what was that suffix setting, right? And I don't know, we can make it like this, so it will be more robust. And let's see if it's working correctly. And it's working correctly, right? So we can see in our command line that everything is recompiled. Everything is fine. So yeah, that's it. You can also create an interface which is not so convenient, but you can also create something like you can convert it to interface, and then everything here will be property, right? Like this. But it should be be named like get and then property. So if it's something different, you need to specify it with the annotation, with already remembered annotation, with a name equals to name, for example, right? This way it will work, but we won't use it in our case today. So yeah, let's roll it back a little bit. So imagine something interesting. So we've made everything like this, but what if you have something like greeting, and then I don't know, country name equals Germany, right? For example, greeting country name actually ID equals I don't know, 23, right? Country was okay. So in this case, we not only have a greeting, right? We have another prefix or path or whatever you name it called country, and then the name, right? So with previous example, we could do it easily, right? So we could like put a config property and then just put a greeting country name, right? In our case, how do we define it there? And it's actually super simple. You define it the way you defined config properties. So you just create a public class called actually not final. I don't know if we need to make it final or not. Called what was that? Country. Let's name it country config. Let's actually make it public static, right? And here we can specify our name, string name, and then string ID, right? Actually, we can make it integer in our case, integer ID. We define our getters and setters here, and now what we do is we create another attribute called private country config, called exactly this name. So we need to put it like this: config country config country. So now, and we also need to create a getter and setter, of course. Let's put it like right here, right? It shouldn't be exactly here. It's just useful to put it like in the same place, but you can create another country config here if you need, of course. So now we can rework our, where is it, greeting service. Let's make it more correct. And let's put here something like your country is plus greeting config get country get name, and we will omit ID when we'll survive without it, right? So now if we refresh it, you can see that your country is Germany. So this way you can freely create like sub properties. I don't know how to name it, like with the name preserves the same way you put it here, right? In this case, country, and then everything in a new class will be automatically mapped to our parameters here. So yeah, that's how you can do it with the micro profile. So one additional magic that you can do with the config properties, with the config instead of specific attribute, is that you can specify constraints for a file. For example, name should be no larger than where is it, max shouldn't be larger than, for example, I don't know, 10, right? Like this. So with this case, name right now shouldn't be larger than 10. So one last thing that I want to mention is different profiles. So if you remember, when we start our Quarkus dev environment, you have profile dev activated. And so by default in Quarkus you have 3 different environments: testing, prod, and dev. And so you can see one when you run our, for example, test hello endpoint, right? If we run it, you will see that in the output of an app, you will see the profile test activated. And of course, we have different output right now. So yeah, let's fix it actually. So you can with Quarkus, you can also specify not only properties, you can specify same properties for different environments, right? So for different profiles. So now what we can do actually is we can put this sign, the % sign, and put a specific type of profile, for example, test, and after that everything goes the same way. So just let's do it the other way. Actually, let's copy everything, right? Let's copy this thing. Let's put it the same way here, but at the start we're going to put a test, and our grading name will be hello, right? Our what it actually expects from us. Let's see actually. Was it here, right? Yeah. So it expects prefix as a that matches, and then at the end okay, so I mean we can put test hello test like this. Let's go with this one, test land, I don't know, and the IDs, we don't need ID at all. So now we should expect our grading resource test to be like hello test, right? And then your country is test land, right? And we also yeah, we expect like this. Let's see if it will work. So now we have for a test profile we have different values than like the normal like dev profile or prod, or like if you don't have anything like with % sign before, that means it's general. So it will be used in all the profiles except it's overwritten somewhere with the test. So if you have a like a % and then profile name before, it will the Quarkus will use this one instead of like general one. That's a good thing. So now you can see that it's working correctly, and the test is passed. So you can use the same thing for def and prod. We can actually put a prod and then greeting name equals guten hello production. Yeah, so like this, hello production. In this case, if we'll package it, package and run, so yeah, it will test. Okay, and let's go to target. Let's open, if it's still here, yes. So let's run the java -jar, and let's reload. Okay, that's interesting. I think we have something. Do we have? Oh yeah, of course, because we forgot. So yeah, if you have a parameter in a command line, it will always overwrite everything that's in application properties. So we need to remove it, of course, right? So we need to remove define. So just a plain java -jar and then jar as well. So now if we restart it, you can see that we have hello production, right? So even though we have greeting name here, we have also the prod greeting name, which is hello production. Of course, if you specify like greeting name right in the parameters, it will override the one that is like in the application properties. So yeah, you now know how to configure your application and make it so the other developers will configure it. One thing that I forgot to specify is that there is a super beautiful thing in the Quarkus called the all-config, and it contains every possible config parameter that you can have in Quarkus, which is not from you, from yourself, right? So it was defined by someone. So if you have, for example, you can write here, I think, database, right? And so you have a flyway. If you use a flyway, how to use it, what the properties do you have? Database related configurations, that's exactly what you want. Quarkus, Kubernetes, ORM, database generation, default catalog, default schema, char set, and everything that you can have. For example, if you use MongoDB, if you have a Quarkus MongoDB library here, you can use this specific attributes, Neo4j, for example, right? Store type, if you use Quartz, even like reactive PostgreSQL, Vault, and like there's so many of them, so you can just look at how many here. It's like scrolling, and it's like endless. So that's actually in Spring, at least what I found is that you have them, but they are so distributed by the docs, so you can find specific doc and then like search for them, and not always you can find. In Quarkus, it's everything in one place. It's super convenient, and you can just search what you want, and so that's it. And another thing that I want to mention is that some of the properties that you define in application properties doesn't always refresh. So one of them is a connection to a database. Let's see if we can find, it's called a data source. Oh, yeah, so one of them will be the data source URL. This one, if you started your app with one data source and then you decide later to I don't know, switch to some different environment, so you use the local host, right, and then you go to the dev app, like to some dev environment. If you just change it and try to reload or even restart with just Quarkus dev, this probably won't work, because this parameter will be set on on the build time, right? So when you rebuild your application, and one way to do it is to firstly oh, we are in target, okay. one way to do it actually is to go to the root folder first and then clean package and only then call Quarkus dev. This way you'll 100% surely refresh all the application properties, even if they are cached. So yeah, so this way it will be for surely changed, and this is very recommended topic to remember, because when you debug something, there is a chance that you'll catch some of these attributes. So I'll put everything in the description, specifically this Quarkus all config, and I'll see you in the next lecture.